To order. This is a legally required annual hearing where we present the highlights of our proposed budget for the upcoming year, so our public has a chance to weigh in and ask any questions ahead of the board discussion and vote. And I will turn it over to our business officer, Miss Mary Beth Rogers.
Okay, so this is your 2023-24 budget public hearing. The state aid budget, just like it's been happening the last few years, we do not have an approved state aid budget. We were hoping this year we would, but there isn't, so we have to, but by law we have to have this approved before June 30th, so we'll have to move forward. The May revenue consensus, revenues came in less than January revenue consensus, and it just showed that maybe the economy could head to a recession. And there's a little bit of concerns because of the Michigan lower income tax that's coming. But it's still in good condition though. The state aid fund is still in really good condition. It's just less than what January said. There's the one-time grants. There will be a lot of that being removed from the budget. And we're not totally sure without having a state aid budget approved where some of these one-times might be next year. There may still be some of them coming back next year, especially in the mental health and security arena, but that's not formalized yet. And like I said, 90% of the revenue is unknown without a state aid budget approved. The 22-23-24 budget parameters. These were the budget parameters that was developed by the board through like January and March. I think the last time we brought it was April, and they agreed on a student count decrease of 50 students, but then to bring in 43 of open enrollment. So in the end, it would only be a 7 loss to our K-12 students. Benefit changes, 9.5% increase. Right now, the MIPSA retirement, there's a 0% change. If there is any increase in expenditures, at this point, the only knowledge I have is ORS will be, or MDE will be funding it through an offset. So there shouldn't be any cost to the district. We're using the governor's budget right now of $458 per pupil increase, which brings us to $9,608 per pupil foundation allowance. We left the shared service and the virtual academy stable, pretty much their enrollment stable. We're being conservative with that number in the shared service arena, but we just don't have all of our contracts signed yet. And then we included and then it also includes having Section 11T and after school funding. We moved forward. That's really the only COVID funding left will be the after school and the 11T summer and after school, and we can spend that through 2024, so that'll be one more summer school after this year, and then an after school this coming year. The human resource contractual obligations, just over $4 million, and then in the board parameters, there were new positions of $745,000 that you guys were made aware of, the board was made aware of. So those are your budget parameters. So you'll see how this will work into the revenues. So your revenue budget assumptions in this 2023-24 budget is your foundation allowance is going from $9,150 to $9,608 for just over $3 million. But there's also a negative $480,400 for 50 student loss. But there's a $413,144 gain on open enrollment. Your virtual academy enhancements in this budget has just over $500,000. And local revenue additions would be your Jewel settlement, and E-rate makes up most of your local revenue increases of just over $209,000. And then we were notified of P18 ISD allocation increase of $481,000 from Oakland schools. So those are your revenue budget assumptions in this current 23-24 budget. Now, these are the one-time federal and state funding changes that you will see in the 23-24 budget. I took out just 4.4 million of 11T funding because that will be spent. The only thing left of that will be the 707,000 for summer school and after school. The ESSER 3 is now all spent. So we just have to remove the 1 million that we spent this year and requested from the state. 97 school state funding, we ended up carrying over a part of that million. So I had to increase it just 182, but you'll see the expenses match that. 98C learning loss, we received that. You'll see that in our final amended budget, and now I'm taking it out. COVID, this was just a tiny little grant we get for administrative cost, just removing that. The IDEA ARP, that was one-time funding, again, COVID funding, and we have spent it, so we shouldn't see that funding again. The Marshall Plan, we've been spending that for several years now, and now it is gone. We will finish finally spending it this year. COVID delayed this a couple of years. We couldn't run the programs to their fullest, so we were able to have to spread it out a couple more years. So and you'll see the expenses are eliminated too. I increased about 367,000 in the line items of mental health grants, and then we do know of a new project search grant that will be getting $100,000 from the ISD. So those are our one-time federal and state funding changes in the 23-24 budget. Now our expenditure budget assumptions. We had benefit changes of 700,000. It was approved to move forward with 4.8 million of human resource changes. Shared service, we dropped the expenses a little bit. Virtual academy, we're starting to drop some of the curriculum budget amounts as we were not recontracting with some of the vendors. Curriculum supplies, 300,000 increase. Technology, that's the one-to-one, 600,000 increase, and then a 400,000 decrease in positions in the district. So those are some of your expenditure reductions. There's another page of them. These are some others. You have a line item. We increased the facilities improvement line item of 500,000. I increased the 31 AA grant. That was carryover. We carried over the revenue from last year. We're carrying over the expenses. Communications, that's an increase of 31,400 for a part-time position and a newsletter. Athletics, that's how much our trainer contract increased this year from last year. E-rate, we're spending 342,650, and then E-rate U.S. self-funding has given us 50% of that in revenue. So that's the expense part. The copiers, we purchased copiers and last year, and tonight we're bringing to the board to purchase a phase 2 of them. This is the difference. Last year we had like 450,000 in the budget. Now we won't need all that. We just need it to have the expenditures of what we're bringing tonight. Heating and electricity, increased that 107,000. That's what our consultant recommended. The Section 11T summer after school programs, that increased the expenditures. Now we have 707,000 of expenses in the budget, and we have 707,000 of revenue in the budget for that. 97 school safety, special ed, all the grants, and then you can see where I eliminated the Marshall Plan grant out of our expenditures. We're expecting to have to increase the sub rate to stay competitive, and then the property liability insurance renewal came in at 66,143 higher than last year. So these are all your revenue and expenses assumptions and changes that have been made in the budget. Now your total revenue for next year is looking at 124 million, and your expenses at over 126 million, and then you have some transfer in of 169,000. This budget we're bringing you is a deficit budget of almost 2.4 million. And this will give you, if this budget is where we end next June, you will get a total fund balance of just under 17% and an unassigned fund balance of just over 15%. So here's your deficit budget again, and then here's your estimated fund balance for next year of 21 million, and then by auditing standards, we are required to break that out. So your non-spendable right now would be 120. You do not have a committed fund balance at this point. Assigned fund balance is your 1.84 million. So your unassigned is just under 19.3 million. Again, just under 17% fund balance. The 21-22 state average is 19.2%. So, any questions on any of the revenue expenditures or that have been presented in the 23-24 budget?
Trustee McGinnis.
Total.
That was on total fund equity. Any other questions from our public or trustees on the parameters and detail in the Plan 23-24 budget? All right. Seeing none, I'll bring this hearing to a close. We will recess for, it looks like, about 12 or 13 minutes. Thank you, Mrs. Rogers. Appreciate your work. We'll see you again during the meeting. So we are now in recess, and we will call our meeting, our business meeting, to order at 7 o'clock sharply. Thank you. We will call the meeting to order. It's a little inside joke, a little end of the year humor. We will call the meeting to order and begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mrs. McLean, may I have a roll call, please?
Yes. Mrs. Love.
Here.
Mrs. McGinnis.
Here.
Mr. Heyer.
Here.
Mrs. Egan.
Here.
Mrs. Crane.
Here.
Mr. Mead. Mrs. Horst.
Here. Mr. Need sends his apologies. He had an out-of-town trip planned before he was reappointed to the board, and so apologizes for not being here tonight. However, I think given his previous, 8 years of service and his numerous approvals of budgets, he has assured me and wants me to assure all of you that he's up to speed and is on board and supportive with the vote that we are taking this evening with the budget. And he will be back next month. This meeting is a meeting of the Board of Education in public for the purpose of conducting the school district's business and is not to be considered a public community hearing. There is time for public participation during the meeting as indicated in agenda items 3 and 9. Item 2 is approval of the consent agenda. May I have a motion, please?
I move that the Board of Education approves the consent agenda as presented.
Support. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. Item 3 is citizens' request to address the board. You are given 2 opportunities to address the board. Under item 3.1, you can request to address the board on any topic that's on tonight's agenda. And under item 9, you're welcome to address the board on any topic. When making comments, please state your name and address and direct your comments to Kelly Horst, President. Each person may speak for up to 2 minutes. Per established procedures, the board will not respond to questions or interact with the speaker during public comment. Sign-up sheet is over on the table, the blue sheet. Mr. Lucido or Ms. Mahoney, would you mind taking a quick look and seeing if any citizens have requested to address the board this evening so far? Thank you very much. The sign-up sheet will remain on the table if anyone does decide that they would like to address the board tonight. When we get to item 9, please feel free to step over there and sign up as requested. Item 4 is superintendent update. Dr. Ryan.
Thank you, President Horst, and to those that could join us this evening and those watching at home or on video later. We just completed in the last week, seems like Friday, the last several days, we've finished our successful school year, and I want to tip my hat and give congratulations to all of our graduates, both at Clarkston High School, at Renaissance High School, and at our post-high program. It was wonderful to take part in all these commencement and really sending a great crop of graduates out into the world. It's exciting to see all the new beginnings, and we're tremendously excited, and speaking on behalf of our staff, our board, our administration, to wish all those individuals well and good luck as we get to watch them go off into their future. So it's always an exciting time, and a little bit of a pulls at your heartstrings as you say those goodbyes, knowing that the students are off to some exciting adventures. I also want to thank our staff, our administration, everybody I just mentioned before, including our Board of Education, for all the support that they provided in making this school year as successful as it was. By many, many measurements, Clarkston Schools really shined, and I really feel like that we're poised and ready to push into a future that's extremely bright in Clarkston. So excited to be part of it, and I just want to give a sense of appreciation to the amazing team collectively, and I also want to expand that to our families, our parents, and our community supporters that help make that possible, including the Clarkston Foundation, who will be represented this evening. So that said, a couple other shout outs that I have to recognize going into summer. Our girls tennis team managed an incredible season and finished 3rd overall in the state of Michigan for Class A schools, which is absolutely amazing. Our boys lacrosse team made it to the state semifinals, back-to-back regional final champions. Looking at a public school being able to compete in the arena, especially lacrosse, which is incredibly competitive and really dominated by many private schools and powerhouses, it's really great to see our hometown really kind of shine. I also want to point out, make sure our community recognizes and knows the amazing achievements of our Destination Imagination teams. Teams from SMS competed with students from a dozen other counties, and the Fine Arts team took 15th place out of 47 teams, and our Service Learning team took 14th out of 25 teams. So I just want to give my congratulations for all the work they've done. On a more, I want to call it somber or just to catch your attention note, the Be Smart resolution, which was adopted by the board earlier this year, focuses on the safe gun storage in homes, and June is National Gun Violence Awareness Month. I want to bring everybody's attention to this really important detail of keeping our kids and our families safe. And we'll be sending out additional communication via social media to remind families about this important issue. So I thank you for your attention that way. So great transition then into celebrations. And I want to welcome, with our board president, we'll formally welcome Mr. Evans on behalf of the Clarkston Foundation, who's going to get recognized here in a moment, and Clarkston's Teacher of the Year, which I will let him announce here publicly. President Horst.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Ryan. We'll move right into our presentation items tonight. We have two, and item 5.1 is recognition of the 2023 Clarkston Foundation Teacher of the Year. So, Mr. Matt Evans from the Clarkston Foundation, if you would come up, please, and tell us a little bit about the Teacher of the Year program and introduce our 2023 Teacher of the Year.
Will do, with an honor. So thank you for having us here this evening. As a 2001 graduate of Clarkston High School and spent all K through 12 in Clarkston, it's an honor to serve on the Clarkston Foundation and represent the board here today. The foundation's been in existence for over 30 years, supporting the community, our educators, and our students, and at that time has given over $1 million in grants and scholarships back to the school district and our educators and our kids. And in that time, we've also done dozens of Teacher of the Year awards and recognitions. This is my third year serving on the committee for the Teacher of the Year. For the foundation, I was the committee chair. This is the second year that we've partnered with LaFontaine Automotive Group. I want to thank them for their support of the Teacher of the Year and generously donating a 2-year lease on a beautiful black Cadillac that's outside here. But this year's teacher process, every year we change, the submissions, the nomination process. This year we are focused on the Early Childhood Center in all of our elementary schools. And through that, we had 16 nominations come in for some incredible educators, as you can imagine. And selfishly, I have 2 kids at Bailey Lake. Actually, one's going on at the middle school, so I know how hard these elementary school teachers work and early childhood center teachers work. We had 16 nominations. The committee reviewed all nominations, got it down to 10 finalists. And with those 10 finalists, we spent about 45 minutes with every single one of them, just getting to know what makes them unique, what makes them special, what makes their classroom special, what motivates, how they motivate their kids. And just really enlightening, and learned a couple things real early on in the process. One, educators don't like talking about themselves at all. It's really hard to pull stuff out of these educators and really what makes them unique and special. But also learned that almost all of them knew they wanted to go into education at an early age. On top of that, going through every single one of these interviews and meeting with them one-on-one, just really, not only as a member of the foundation, but as a parent in the community, just made me extremely proud of the teachers we have in Clarkston schools. And Dr. Ryan, thank you again. You were a big part of that presentation and shared some very thoughtful comments to everyone that was in that room, so really appreciate your presence there. It was not an easy selection, as you can imagine, but I'm honored to invite Heidi Kroll up from Springfield Plains Elementary. We got to spend quite a bit of time with Heidi, and an absolute innovator in the classroom. Does everything she possibly can to make the children feel at home, as you can imagine. Since the age of 4, knew that she wanted to be an educator. You could just tell it was her passion, it is her passion, it's her purpose for being here. She had been nominated 3 times, so it's not like this was just a one-time nomination and she happened to be the top of the class. It just shows that consistently she's delivering for our students and our community. Volunteers a lot of her time back to the community and the district, and the Clarkston Foundation couldn't be more honored to have Heidi here with us today and as our Teacher of the Year for 2023. So I'll quit talking because this is the real champion that you want to hear from this evening. So Heidi, please. Thank you.
Yes.
I just want to say it's a true honor to be recognized as an educator in this way. Never in my life as a teacher did I think I'd ever get such a bonus because we teach from the heart and we don't think about ever receiving a Cadillac as a gift, and to be recognized in that way has just really changed my outlook on things and my positivity towards what I do. But I read this book every year called Wonder, and in that book they make a quote about how everybody in their lifetime should deserve a standing ovation. And I just want to thank the Clarkston Foundation and the LaFontaine Auto Group, because they gave me mine, and I'm really proud of that moment in my life. And just so everyone knows, the local newspaper up north got my article today, and it will be published on Thursday. So I'll be sharing that with the Clarkston Foundation when that gets published. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Oh, don't go anywhere. We all want to shake your hand. So hey, this is our little treat here. So we want to congratulate you. Sorry about that microphone. Thank you. Congratulations. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
You know, and I'll just say, you know, to the board and to Dr. Ryan, again, you know, thank you for the honor and the ability to have me here today to present. If we had enough time, I'd bring 16 educators in this room and talk about every single one to you, but just tremendous, group of educators we have in this district, and you all should be very proud of that too. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Clarkston Foundation. Thank you, LaFontaine, for recognizing our teachers. The room that day was packed. I mean, literal standing room only. People pulling chairs wherever they could, and it was amazing. And my youngest son, Colin, was not only lucky to have Mrs. Kroll as a second grader, but was double lucky to have him again as a fourth grader. So I was overwhelmed with emotion that day. I was standing in the corner and I had tears, and I'm getting choked up again today, Heidi. I just think the world of you. And we're so lucky to have you in Clarkston and have 400 other teachers just like you. I mean, you're just the best of the best. So go enjoy your summer. Go finish that farmhouse. Have some good quality time with your boys. We're just so grateful for you, and for you, the Clarkston Foundation, for honoring and recognizing our teachers the way you do. Thank you for making our last meeting of the year, for letting us celebrate our teachers this way. Thank you very much. Our second presentation tonight is a review, an update of our strategic plan. The board had a very lengthy workshop prior to this meeting, where we heard in great detail sort of a recap of the year's efforts and what we can look forward to in the year ahead. But we've asked Ms. Mahoney and Ms. Puzio to give a very brief recap for our friends in the audience and who may be watching at home right now or later, so they can understand exactly where we're going and what we've accomplished this year as well. So Ms. Mahoney, if you would.
Thank you. Good evening, Board of Education. Just excited to recap this year again, and also some insights into next year in regards to our strategic plan. We always like to start with our mission statement as we lean into creating the learning environments for our students, staff, and families so that all are challenged, healthy, engaged, safe, and supported. Our vision statement is something we strive to reach for all our kids, that our students are well prepared for a future that excites them, and they believe that they can achieve their dreams. And so as we speak to the efforts that we've made this year, as well as what we want to put in place for next year, I hope that you'll see pieces of our vision and our mission well in action. We go back to our strategic plan. It is based on 4 pillars of excellence, and that is the whole person development, our foundation and academic skills, our student-focused learning, as well as our future pathways. And within those 4 pillars of excellence, we have 10 goals that we put a lot of strategies in place to achieve those goals. And as I spoke in the workshop, a lot of these are blended, they cross over. For example, under student-focused learning, when we increase ways for students to demonstrate mastery of essential learning, we know that we are increasing our academic skills within our students. So you're going to see a crossover in a lot, I think, of the work that we're doing. This year's theme, year 4 of the strategic plan, was what's going well. And so we've sat back and really reflected often with our subject area coordinators, with our building principals, always about looking at the sites of what's going well. Our areas of focus, one was our multi-tiered system of supports, which we call MTSS. And these are supports in place to improve the academic growth for all our students, starting from young fives all the way up through graduation. And so we're lifting up the work of everything that we put in place so that students can achieve in their academic performance. We've looked at social emotional learning as well as what we're putting in place for career explorations and readiness. And so at the elementary level, I'm going to let Stacy lead the first portion of this.
Okay, so our pillars are all interconnected through the lens of well-being, community, and academics, and so we will break that down for elementary and secondary. Just a reminder that the pieces that have gold around them were new for us this year of strategies that we're examining, and the green one was just one that we have continued from last year. We've continued to work with Dr. Jim Henry, who is a trauma specialist, and just working to help us support our kids. We've also engaged in restorative practices. We had all of our elementary principals, social workers, and psychologists, as well as some teacher leaders engaged in that learning and working to how do we resolve conflicts within the classroom as well as within the building. We've been thankful that we have increased social workers and psychologists in every single one of our elementary buildings. We have a full-time slotted psychologist at each of our elementary buildings, as well as social workers between 1.5 and 2 social workers at each building, depending on need. We have continued to have social emotional interventionists at Andersonville, North Sashaba, and Pine Knob. And North Sashaba actually has 2, and they have one of those funded through Title I funding. We have expanded our social emotional coach who works with both our staff as well as with individual students and working to meet the needs of students. And we've also had consistent threat and risk assessments and documentation where our schools work in teams to assess the needs of and risks that, or perhaps even threats that our students pose, and how do we provide the supports with them for that. When we think about community, we have continued our partnership with Easter Seals and working to provide supports for our students. You'll see LaFontaine here again. We heard them about Teacher of the Year and supporting that. They've also supported us through having dogs in each of our buildings. And so this year we were able to add Cork at Springfield Plains, and working to have family and parent engagement and having an engagement person who helps to connect families with the school and what their needs are, and working with the community as well. Some of the things that we weren't able to get into this year but would like to continue to keep that as a focus to examine is perhaps looking at a partnership again. We had this with the Clarkston Medical Group before COVID of having some clinics in our schools, and we want to examine what that might look like again. Adding the resources for parents on our website, as well as just the HAP Wellbeing Program for staff, because our mission statement is about staff and students and families being well, and so that is a focus that we want to continue to have.
In looking at academic growth, we have developed a handbook for the whole multi-tiered system of support process for the elementary level. This is really going to allow, I think, all parties within our elementary division to have clarity in terms of this process. We have defined Tier 1, which is classroom instruction, and we want to make sure that our students are receiving the best instructional practices and resources that they have in order to learn and be successful, and our coaches are a big piece of helping our teachers grow and to be their very, very best. We've also defined Tier 2, which is when our students aren't successful in that classroom instruction, and so what is our response? Our Tier 2 can be a small group that occurs right within the classroom by our classroom teacher, or we can pull them out by a certified teacher who acts as an interventionist when it comes to literacy or math to receive an intervention. We're hoping that these cycles are about 6 to 8 weeks, and students then become successful within the area of need and go right back into that classroom to be successful within Tier 1. If students are still not successful within Tier 2, we do lead into a Tier 3, which is even a smaller setting, 1 to 3 students, again led by a certified teacher acting as an interventionist in the areas of literacy and math. We have seen growth. We want to continue this process so that our kids can continue to learn. We've also defined our leadership roles in terms of our school psychologist, our social worker. What role does special education have within the 3 tiers? And so they're really bringing all the brains into the fold, I think, to make the whole system vibrant and successful. And I'm eager to launch this in August so that everyone does have clarity and that we can continue the great work around teaching and learning. We've also defined our professional learning community, I think K-12, and it will have a definition that we can put in front of all of our teachers, because I do believe when we have successful professional learning communities, I think that will impact our instruction the best, and our kids will then therefore learn. We continue to look at data, we continue to define our curriculum and bring the most effective instruction in front of our kids. We've embraced our Literacy Essentials of Oakland. This is a partnership with Oakland schools focused on literacy. It's 2.0, which means it's our 2nd year partnering with them. And this year, we're leaning into the essential practices. And we focused on word study and really redefined our instructional practice around word study. We did a principals lab and our coaching lab over at Andersonville, which Oakland schools did lead. It was very beneficial. We want to bring all our schools into this lab, but we've seen, again, our data is showing improvement when it comes to word study based on the work that we were allowed to do with Oakland schools. Our staff continues to grow and learn in Leader in Me, and we've also done a very, I think, hard hit when it comes to careers at the elementary level, just exploring with our young 5s through even grade 2 about what kind of careers in terms of playing a game can they be exposed to. As kids grow, I think 3-5, it becomes a little bit more mature in terms of allowing them to do some self-awareness of what might interest them. We've taken a close look within our curriculum how we can lift up careers, and we also brought in career folks within our community to kind of lead their story in terms of what a journalist does, what a fireman does, what a veterinarian does, to really kind of interact with our kids. And they were excited and they asked a lot of questions, and even thinking about our field trips as we go out in terms of what careers look like outside our doors. So we continue to work with careers even at our youngest level to think about what they might like to be. And now we'll look at secondary.
So you'll see a lot of things that are very common to what you just heard about elementary, and that allows for some continuity to happen between elementary up into secondary, but then there's some targeted pieces that are very specific for our secondary students. So again, working with Dr. Jim Henry to help support our students. Restorative practices, we've had two cohorts go through that. The first cohort did more of a study in looking in how do we provide supports for our students, how do we build that as part of our culture and the way that we do that. How does that look for a teacher to introduce and work with academics, as well as to help support different social emotional needs. We've also then had a second cohort of secondary teachers go through the learning to understand what that might look like in their own classrooms and how to help build that bridge for the rest of the buildings. Again, implementing that restorative approach for conflicts and how do kids understand the impact, the harm that they may have caused by their words, by their actions, and how do we bring some resolution to that. Again, having that consistent threat and risk assessment and documentation, again with teams. We've also trained 2 people to actually be able to train the rest of our staff in the threat and risk assessments, so that it allows for consistency and what are the things that we can put into place that puts it into our documentation system and everything. Looking again at resources for parents on website, continuing to grow that. How do we provide supports that are both academic and social emotional needs and have parents be able to access that? And then looking at our lesson designs for Pause and Wolf Time and Community Forum that allows for that focus on well-being and how do I take care of myself so that I can do well as a student. In community, again, very similar. We've continued and expanded our partnership with Easter Seals. We now have Easter Seals co-located in all 4 of our secondary buildings, and that provides supports for students right there on campus who may need that. and that they've also been a great support to us as a district in having that extra social emotional needs, mental health needs, and support that allows our staff to be able to meet the needs of our kiddos. Again, we've expanded the dogs. We have Frida now at Clarkston Junior High, and we have Peanut at Sashabaw Middle School, again, focusing in on that family engagement. And then very similar to elementary, just really looking at what are the needs that we can meet our students' medical needs, as well as resources for parents and support for our staff.
So at the secondary level, as we look at this multi-tiered system of support, we really want to focus on Tier 1. Again, that is classroom instruction to improve the learning for our secondary students. And so we're looking at 4 initiatives, 3 of which we have started already. One will be new. The first is Reading Apprenticeship, which is national researched work, and it lifts up the practices of reading in all content areas. We're going to work with FAME. This is from Michigan educators, so it's for formative assessment, which is in the moment. What can we read and know about our kids in the moment to make instructional decisions around their learning? New will be Building Thinking Classrooms. This is international research, and it was a book study that our grades 3 through 5 teachers lifted up. It is practices that sustain K-12, and so we'll be looking at good tools for the classroom with Building Thinking Classrooms. And then our 4th is restorative practices, which is already in place. We just want to continue and expand the work in that area. So again, we continue to expand career readiness. Also, we've added a career counselor at the high school for next year. Our middle school, we've added counselors as well at the junior high that will lift up the career work. And so we want to continue to build career readiness when we think about preparing our kids after they leave high school for a successful career that they definitely are interested in. So that's the exciting work that we've done, and that's the exciting work that we are headed into when we think about the school year 23-24.
Great. Is there anything you want to say?
Just kind of looking up from our community who's engaged this evening, hopefully watching this directly or on video, looking at it from our Board of Education, our administrative point of view, taking it right down to the text that we want to take responsibility that we're building young people of our community into good citizens, good neighbors. We want to make sure they're well-rounded as human beings. We want to make sure they're academically proficient at a level that they can read, write, do math, and think well. We want them to be able to take advantage with these skills, not only our advanced programs and offerings that we have in everything from career tech classes to advanced placement to really looking at everything that we have out there that can really push kids to a next level, and they're being read of it. And then obviously, hopefully you heard, looking at their futures, looking at the career aspects of where our students go, that Clarkston Schools is not an end. Clarkston Schools is a beginning to the next phase of their life, and that we have a responsibility and a purpose to make sure that we're doing our best to make sure that when they cross that stage at DTE or at the Renaissance High School or post-high, or they're receiving certifications in the trades as they graduate their senior year. Wherever they move on to, they're moving on to a future that they can be proud of, and we can be part of that. So all these elements really come together, and I expect next year to be even better than this year by all measures. So I appreciate the presentation from the team here.
Great. All right, thank you so much. I know, trustees, we had quite a bit of discussion during our workshop. Any other comments we need to make now? Okay. Thank you very much. We'll move on to action items. 6.1 is approval of personnel changes. May I have a motion, please?
I move that the Board of Education approves the personnel changes as listed on the attached sheets.
Support.
Are there any questions or discussion?
I just wanted to say for the public, so the new instructional staff is actually funded by a special grant that you can only use on certain positions. And that the new administrative positions are more of a restructuring, not really new positions. So that's why I'm supporting all the personnel changes.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. Item 6.2 is approval of the 22-23 final amended budget. May I have a motion, please?
I move that the Board of Education approves the final amended budget for 2022-2023 as presented.
Support.
Great. Ms. Rogers, do you want to come talk us through the revenue and expenditure adjustments in our amended budget, please?
So this will be your 2022-23 final budget amendment. And here are the changes that you will see in the revenue. And it ends up being just under 8.7 million changes from the one brought to you in March, the first amended. The local revenue is just reducing by 73,000. Didn't receive the donations as we have in the past. And the big thing was the settlement, Jewel settlement. We thought we were going to get it this school year. It's now not going to be received until sometime in October or November. So you'll see it's been moved to the 23-24 budget. Just the money coming from Oakland schools, just a little bit higher than what was in our amended budget. And then the shared service, MDE, cap calc, we do not know, we still have not received the penalty yet in our state aid funding that we usually will probably get it in July or August. So we were anticipating what we thought it would be all year through a calculation, and in the end, the MDE calculation is done differently. And so this was good for us. We had it as a 3.75 million penalty, and we ran and told it'll be around 940,000 penalty when they actually do pull it. They just don't pull it until like July or August after our budgets are all done. But so that's what that is. State aid funding, just increasing that to match where we're at right now with our state aid report. We did receive our allocation for our special education funding, Medicaid, and the last I'd heard from the ISD, they're expecting it to be about $240,000 higher than what they had originally told us. The MIPSER's offset funding, this includes just under 5.7 million of 147C2, and that is a funding that the MDE with the ORS is doing. They're just running it through our books. They started running it through our books in March, and they're giving us just over under 5.7 million of revenue, but then they're also invoicing us 5.7 million. So it's an in and out. It just looks really kind of unsettling on our budgets, but it is an in and out. So 98C Learning Loss Grant. We went after this grant, and we found out in May that we got it. And this is covering 4 interventionists that used to be covered by COVID funding. Now we can cover at least 4 of them with this funding. The Section 11T funding, we are just not spending as much as expected, so I'm carrying over some of it to the next year's budget. Same with the mental health security grants, those are carryovers to the 23-24 budget. So that gets you, like I said, a total revenue adjustment of $8.679 million.
To be clear, Ms. Rogers, when you talk about the shared service cap and that calculation, that's just related to our partnerships where you're limited by growth in any given year. The state has recalculated that to be a 1-year piece on growth, and then you move forward with full growth based on that previous number. It's kind of a complicated formula, but it's not a penalty and we did wrong. It's based on our aggressive growth in this program.
Yeah, and we used a more simplified calculation, and their calculation ended up being a lot more complicated. And it would help a lot if the MD would pull it sooner, so we knew, but unfortunately they don't pull it.
Yep, thank you. You can move on.
Yeah, so that's where we're at with that. So, you have any questions on the revenue as I move on to the expense adjustments?
Go ahead.
The 2022-23 expenditures adjustments. increased through all the line items throughout the detailed budget. HR increases about $270,000. The shared services actually, was able to reduce expenses about $130,000. Virtual Academy, I increased the expenses $217 from the amended budget. And then there you see your MIPS or offset funding. That's the actual revenue we're going to get. And then I had to increase a bunch of our retirement line items by that much. This is supposed to be just a one-time thing. I don't think we'll see it we won't see it in our budget next year. Special education expenses, after running through where I think it's going to end, we're up almost $320,000. Section 11T summer after-school program, I reduced a bunch of that and moving it into 23-24. Career Tech, due to the purchase of the truck and trailer, in the end, this is how much I had to increase the budget to purchase that. Security grant, we didn't spend it all, so we're carrying the expenditures over to 23-24. We didn't spend 620 of it. Operations and maintenance is up. A lot of some of it's electrics and heat, but a lot of it's just inflation. Athletics is up. And then just miscellaneous, when I add up everything in negative, everything that's just small little amounts, you end up with a negative 125, and your total expenditure adjustments are $5.44 million. So those were your adjustments between the amended budget in March and the final amended. So when you approved your budget in March, you had a $3.5 million surplus and a fund balance of 17%. Due to all those changes, you are now at a $6.734 million surplus, 18.92% fund balance. And that'll be really helpful and important as we move forward to 23-24 in future years as a lot of this one-time funding falls off. So do I have any questions on where you're at with the final amended budget?
Any questions? Mrs. Love? Yeah, I was wondering, why do we have so much extra from the summer budget? Was
Because
it like a
it's
$500,000?
going to be spent in 23-24, in 24-25. Okay. But I had the expenses in there because I had the revenue in there, so I took both out.
I'm just wondering why we didn't spend it if we had it, because I think
we are spending at least $200,000 to $300,000 this year. There's just so much you can spend on summer programming.
All right, so we have like a $500,000 that we're transferring over for summer programs in the next budget for.
Yes.
Okay, so hopefully we're increasing our summer programs for next summer then, because I think we could have served well to do a little bit more of that this summer. That's just kind of a comment, but.
Okay. Right.
And actually, that's this summer. Summer 23 is in next year's budget, because summer school is mostly next year. So this budget has the 2022-22 summer in it, which is already spent and done. And we have next summer too that we can spend the funds to in the 24-25 budget. Any other questions?
So it'd be fair to characterize this summer we're spending a lot more than we did last summer?
I haven't seen how the expenses
Based
are going to come
on
out,
in-person,
but
I think
I
we
would
have,
think
but-
so, yeah.
And it would be nice even next summer we could even continue to increase in that trajectory. You know,
Yes.
long term, I think it would be a positive thing for the school district to continue to invest in, obviously.
So, may I make
Yep.
a comment?
Yep.
Just for Mrs. Love. So what we do right after the school year that just started will hit this year's budget, but our budget ends June 30th, so starting the 23-24 school year, we do have another summer session, and that will hit next year's budget. So that's why it's a little confusing, because our budget year, it goes right in the middle of it, if that makes sense.
Okay. Anything else regarding the current year's final amended budget? Okay. All in favor of approving the 22-23 final amended budget, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. Item 6.3 is approval of the 2023-24 original budget.
I move that the Board of Education approves the original budget for 2023-2024 as presented.
Support.
Ms. Rogers, you want to come on back? Just in case we had any questions, we had our public hearing on this already, in which Mrs. Rogers went into great detail in terms of, very similar to what you just saw in terms of our budget parameters, revenues and expenditures. And I know we have several pages in here of detail of the original budget. So now would be a time, trustees, if anyone wants to raise any questions or comments regarding the budget, the proposed budget for 23-24. Ms. Love?
I had a question, so page 5, under special education expenditures, we're expecting an increase of special education tuition of $272,000, and it says here per ISD, and I was just wondering what that was all about.
We get charged by the ISD. They already gave us our allocation of how much they're going to spend. Every year, we get charged for tuition from the ISD for special programs.
The ISD charges us?
Yes, for sending kids to their programs.
Center programs, am I correct?
And is this a normal, it just seems like a high percentage amount, like over 25% increase. Is that a normal increase or is that abnormal?
I think that's pretty normal, and you'll see the revenue has went up, and the revenue will also go up. So the revenue has actually went up $431,000, and then their tuition went up, 200 and...
Madam President?
Mm-hmm.
May I ask Ms. Rogers, is that, to clarify that, is that for center programs for students that do not get their services here in Clarkston Community
Yes.
Schools? Thank you.
And then can you or John Lucido just clarify why, if we're expecting a decrease in enrollment, why would we spend $745,000 on new positions? Can you explain that it's mainly grant money, or confirm that it's mainly grant money except for one of the positions?
745 is those increases that was presented about 2 months to the board that you approved to put in the board parameters. That's what that 745 is. It's like the career counselor, I don't remember all the positions.
Those new positions are covered by grants. We have 3 counselors that we're adding at the secondary building, the behavior interventionist positions, and the career counselor. We anticipate all of those being covered by the grants.
Yeah, I just want to make that clear to the public.
Absolutely.
Because on paper, it doesn't say that necessarily, and so I think it's important to kind of make that clear. So thank you.
And our class size is expected to say, based on our staffing, same or similar, based on what your projections for the...
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions or comments regarding the budget? Reminding everyone that we started in, January or so, having these discussions and including several at this table, and then you've updated us, obviously, several times, and so this is how we ended up. This is sort of the operational piece, then, the very detailed operational piece of those discussions, of the parameters that we've set, of the changes and the requests that you've made over the months of positions like this. And so I'm glad we can clarify those, where those funds are coming from, and how we're filling those needs to keep serving students.
Yes, and also you're also approving the food service, early childhood, the ITV, and the Fund 29 budgets too.
Right. Thank you. So general fund and all of those other special funds. Should I call them special funds? Okay. Final call. Questions, comments? All right. Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. Item 6.4 is approval of proposal for copier replacement. May I have a motion, please?
I move that the Board of Education approves the Phase 2 copier contract fleet replacement proposal to RICO as presented.
Support.
Any questions or discussion? Could you just give us a brief, Ms. Rogers? I know you mentioned this earlier, and just remind us, we started this process, was it earlier this year with the first phase of our copier replacement, and kind of why this has been chunked out this way, separated out this way?
In April, we brought you a proposal. It was, trying to remember the amount, I think it was around 400, well, it's probably right here. Let me look at the budget.
Madam President, may I ask for a friendly amendment to include the cost in that proposal?
Oh, certainly.
In that recommendation of $97,548.73.
Yes.
It was around 400,000.
Who made the
you
original?
approved.
Who supported?
I thought it was Elizabeth.
Ms. Egan supported. Will you accept the friendly amendment? Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
And now got the ones that absolutely had to be replaced. And then RICO had pulled out about 25 that they felt could wait to be replaced. And that's 25. And the administration decided to move forward and get those replaced. So that way we have the full fleet replaced.
Okay.
And so we kind of, just so they could all be on the same timeline was a big, we just wanted to get them all replaced while they're in inventory. And the more we thought about it, the cost is probably just going to continue to increase. So let's get them ordered now and get them in while there's inventory and before they increase again in price. And then everybody can we'll have a full fleet. And we should be good for 5 to 6 years then.
Great. Okay, thank you for the reminder. All right, any other comments or discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. Thank you. Item 7 is report items. 7.1 is our monthly finance update. Mrs. Rogers.
Busy today.
Busy show for you.
Okay, so the financial update will get you through May 31st, and then I will bring you June, July, and August in September. Your current monthly financial update as of May 31st, your budget to actual revenues right now are just under 82%. Your budget to actual are just over 83%. And right now you're at just under 14 million fund balance as of May 31st. But as we book lots of revenue over the summer, that will shoot up. You'll see how your graphs work. That always shoots way up. And then you ended last year at 16 million. We're expecting to increase that 16 million, like I said, by almost 6.8 million. So once we get the audit done and stuff in October. So that is your May 31st financial update. And if you have any questions on any of the expenditures or revenue that you received in the details.
Any questions from the monthly financial report? All right. I see none. Thank you very much. Item 8 is discussion items. We have one this evening. It is for board operating procedures, and I will turn this over to Mrs. Crane, reminding the board that when we updated our board operating procedures, we decided as a board that we would affirm these every year at our organizational meeting in July. And so giving the board the opportunity the month prior to just review and discuss them and then provide any feedback if there are any changes or additions or edits or, I don't know, significant somethings to be made, that Mrs. Crane has a chance to consider that and review that. So when we meet next month for our organizational meeting, we have sort of a vetted, clean copy that we can all be behind and review and affirm as we have decided to do as a body. So Mrs. Crane, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, President Horst. Just a reminder that I was tasked with updating our board operating procedures at the time because I was the newest board member, and it was kind of a good way to look at it with fresh eyes and make sure somebody's sitting down for the first time just had a very short, document that they could sit at and kind of get a really good idea of what we at the table expect from each other. To that end, I received no questions over the weekend after seeing this in the board packet, but I would like to schedule some time and go through this, kind of nitpick it with Mrs. Love as our newest board member now, to see what she thinks about especially the orientation piece, things like that. So I'd like to do that before we finalize it, and I'd also like my colleagues to look through it and make sure it all still makes sense. I looked through it, I've read it again, I'm very happy with it, but
Anyone have any comments or anything that they would bring to it at this point?
I do. However, I guess we could
no, it's fine to hear now
talk
too.
about it when we meet. But I just, as a new member, under the meeting agendas that they will be presented on Thursday, I would love to have a week. This takes me hours dissecting these 100, 200 page.
What page are
board
you on,
packets.
Mrs. Love? I'm sorry.
8.
Oh, I see it now. Thank you.
And I don't know the page.
Oh, she said agenda, but
Oh, yeah.
it's
Okay,
the
so
board
and then page
packet.
10. Oh, no, it's not on page 10. There's something that it says you won't get personally involved with concerns brought to you, and I just kind of wanted more clarification about that. And but I can't find it right now. But we can talk about it when
She's
we.
confusing the packet with the agenda.
So back to your first one about the board agenda, I think you want the board packet a week.
Oh,
That's
yes.
different.
Yeah.
Yes, and I don't think we can do a full week on the board packet, can we? Have we ever
I
done
know
that?
you don't, but yeah,
No, I
would
know.
love
I'm just
to have
wondering, as
that.
the rest of the board, what you guys...
We had tried in the past to extend that out, and it was slightly maddening because there would be so many changes.
Changes.
That ultimately it didn't prove to be beneficial, because now you're comparing versions of things rather than just going through it. And so it's one of those things where it used to be Friday we would get it, and we've moved it to Thursday, and that seems to work. I mean, it is, you just have to kind of set up, you need your time. And clearly, when you're newer on the board, like, it absolutely takes longer because it's the first time you're reading everything. You know, there are certainly things that, you know, I know exactly what I'm looking at in a summer tax collection resolution because I've approved 22 of them. You know, and so it gets easier over time, but it's very challenging, like, especially when we're waiting for things usually from the lawyers. You know, like a resolution from Troon or something. Like, typically we're not getting that far in advance. So, you know, we wouldn't want to have 2 or 3 versions. So that's the history of it. You guys can certainly chat and see what you want to bring before us.
I did find the other piece that you were looking for, Mrs. Love, on page 12, under board members' responses to the community or employee complaints. The second bullet says the board members should not become individually and personally involved in the request or complaint. And I think that was just the chain of command that we kind of, as the board, we bring it to them in that direct order in order to kind of all work together. Just like we don't speak to the press as, you know, a spokesperson for the board. I think it's kind of along those lines.
Well, I think it's more the idea that we help facilitate rather than fix, right? I mean, we aren't, I mean, certainly it isn't meant to imply that we don't communicate with parents, we don't hear their concerns and complaints, we don't try to help connect them with the right people, because we obviously are going to know much more intimately how to direct them. I mean, from a parent who may not, you know, who may be overwhelmed by the idea of how do I help my child? Who do I go to? I mean, that's really where I think someone will come to you or any of us and say, I don't feel I'm getting help. Help me. How do I get help, right? And that's where that established kind of chain of command goes. Sometimes what they want you to do is say, fix this for me. And that really is where that line is meant to be drawn. I mean, we aren't ones who go storming into a building and demand things be done, right? I mean, it's sort of that fine line of of let me help facilitate this for you, let me help point you in the right direction, let me help direct you, have you spoken to the teacher? You know, so we always sort of refer people back to that chain of command. And so it isn't meant to turn, you know, for you to sort of turn a talk to the hand kind of philosophy as much as it is to say, don't try to fix their problem, help put them in the right direction, right? Help put them on the right track.
If you can think of a better way to express that when we talk, I mean, I'd love to hear it for sure.
Yeah, I think, I had one this weekend that probably fits here where a friend of a friend said, hey, I'm dealing with some IEP related issues. I'm not getting the kind of resolution that I want. I asked a couple questions. I'm like, this is the person you should have them call. Here it is. Here they are. And I was done with that. In other cases, I would say, hey, Dr. Ryan, can you handle this, please? Get it to the right person. Just depends on what the connection. If I get an email from a friend, I would just forward it on and say, hey, can you close the loop on this? Rather than me saying, what are we doing about this? Or how could this possibly be? That's really the difference of you're not internalizing somebody else's situation. Right. You do not belong in the midst of solving a student-related issue. As board members, even if they're friends or close acquaintances, there's FERPA, there's rules around student records and privacy and confidentiality, and it's not our place as a board to insert ourselves into those either operationally or directly, but absolutely we want to make sure everybody gets their concern addressed. It's really more we're like a switchboard to some extent of here's where you plug in and here's how you talk to that person. And depending on what it is, you might say to the superintendent, hey, could you just let me know how this goes? Yep. And the superintendent would report back and say, hey, this is how it went. This is what happened.
I think another element of it is that we're all pretty assertive and can get our way around the district pretty well because we know the district. And I could imagine that a parent might say, oh, you did a good job getting to step one for me. Can you now go talk to the teacher for me? Because I'm just a little nervous and I want this for my child, but I don't know how to talk to the teacher. And then the next thing you know, you have a board member speaking to a teacher. And I think that can cause within itself some disruption between the relationship of the parent with the teacher. And so I think Steve's comment about us being switchboards is a really great analogy. I don't think it does not prohibit us from guiding parents. I've guided many parents who have called me asking for who do I talk to and where do I go. And on occasions I have gone to the superintendent and only with the parent's permission and expressed that this parent is having difficulty with XYZ and just made them aware of it. So we are a switchboard for our parents. We're here to help them and guide them, but we're not here to be the parent in place of the parent.
And not to belabor the point, but the reason why this is in here is because we've had a couple board members in the past who would show up and say, people are saying, and they would lay out some sort of scenario, and it was like them bringing the issue forward on behalf of random citizens / parents. And it's we don't have any of the details. It's not a helpful way to facilitate solving that issue, but it was the board member being tenacious solving it at that point, and it's who are these people? And that's really the crux of this is you may have your own passionate issues and you bring them forward, but you're not the sort of nexus of the community to dump all their issues on you and have you fight for them, right? It's you plugging them into the right spot is really that's probably the best way I could explain it. If that makes sense.
Thank you.
I appreciate the feedback.
Yeah.
All right, so I will let the two of you
Yes.
connect, and I think it is always helpful. And Ms. Love and I, in fact, had a conversation last week, kind of a 6-month check-in, especially since we went through such an intensive orientation. And I wanted to know what was helpful, how did it go, and so I have some notes from that conversation.
Perfect.
Which I'll
I'd
pass
also
on.
really like it because I was supposed to do it before COVID as the really new board member, and then COVID hit, so I think I was 3 or 4 years in before I actually did it. Yeah. So you're really still new. It'll help. So thank you.
Yeah. Good. Okay. And so we will look forward to then any edits or changes which you can highlight for us in July, and then we will affirm this and continue to move forward.
And I would just add my appreciation for you owning this and really being tenacious about updating it. And I think like the kind of frustrating part about it, if there is one, is that you don't necessarily want to repeat a bunch of bylaw and policy, but like you want to have everything in one place so that as you have a new person come on board, it is a good guide and it is a good reminder for us of the professionalism we want to have at the table. And so I think it's very good to review it every year. Thank you for owning it. And I think while we're high functioning, is absolutely the time to make sure this is reflective of our desired outcomes here, because obviously what goes on at this board table directly affects student achievement, and we want to make sure that's a positive effect.
Yes. Thank you.
Madam President, may I ask that any suggested changes get reported to us ahead of time?
Yes. Sure.
And we can review so that we can have opportunity to have full board input to them.
Yes.
Can we do that at least a week in advance?
At least.
Okay.
I will
Yeah.
try to get
If
together.
we could do that before the 4th of July, right? Because the 4th of July holiday will be.
I'm gone.
Okay, or. We'll
No,
work
that's
that
fine. No,
out.
I mean, if
we can do it this weekend, yes.
If you did have
Then I'm
changes,
Oh, I forgot. Okay, I forgot.
we could certainly just discuss at the organizational meeting and
Yeah.
approve
Yes.
at the next meeting.
Right.
There's nothing that mandates.
Well, that's true.
We have to approve at the next meeting. So if the changes were at a
I'm
level.
sorry, what?
Never mind.
That was done strictly for Mr. Heyer. Dr. Horst is going to be so tickled when he watches the video today. Okay. All right. Thank you
you.
very much. You got what you need?
Yes,
All
I
right.
appreciate it.
We'll move on. All right. Item 9 is citizen comments. Citizens are welcome to address the board on any topic at this point on the agenda. I don't think we have any citizens that signed up this evening. Item 10 is information items. Our next Board of Education meeting is Monday, July 10th. We will start here in this room at 5 o'clock. We'll do the organizational meeting here in this room so we can get our business done, and then we'll take a break and we will adjourn. Have we confirmed Deer Lake Inn? Okay, so then we will go for our retreat and dinner at Deer Lake Inn on Dixie Highway. I believe we're going to be off in that side room or something. Mrs. McLean is all over it. So we'll start here at 5 o'clock, and then we'll go straight over there for our retreat. Item 11 is a closed session, so we will adjourn into closed session. There will be no decisions made during the closed session, so we will adjourn from the public meeting from closed session. May I have a motion, please, to go into closed session for the purposes of attorney-client privilege?
I move that we go into closed session for purposes of attorney-client privilege.
Support.
Mrs. McLean, may I have a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Heyer?
Yes.
Mrs. McGinnis?
Yes.
Mr. Mead? Mrs. Egan?
Yes.
Mrs. Crane?
Yes.
Mrs. Love?
Yes.
Mrs. Horst?
Yes. All right, the board is now in closed session.
No action.